Warren Buffett has one rule: never make a bet you cannot walk away from. Napoleon Bonaparte had the same rule. He broke it once. It cost him everything. November 1812, Russia. 40,000 men, 2 bridges, 40 below zero. 6 months earlier, Napoleon commanded 600,000 soldiers. Tonight, less than 90,000 are still alive. He will never win another battle. 2 centuries later, Omaha. Cherry Coke, no appointments before 10. That man is Warren Buffett. Same method, same instinct, one difference. Buffett never crossed the Niemen. Who was actually richer? You might want to see this. Paris, 1804. The Pope has traveled from Rome for the coronation. At the climax of the ritual, the man at the center reaches up, takes the crown from the Pope's hands, and places it on his own head. He did not need to be given anything anymore. He owned it already. By 1812, Napoleon controlled around 40% of the entire European economy. France, Spain, Italy, the German states, his. He had appointed his brothers as kings of half the continent. Economists calculate the economic resources Napoleon personally commanded in modern terms somewhere between $300 billion and $1 trillion as the total output of the territories under his direct control. One man, every franc of it. Warren Buffett peaked at $150 billion, around 0.5% of US GDP. Napoleon represented 40% of a continent. Both men reached the absolute ceiling of what their world allowed. One did it with armies, the other with patience. Winner, Napoleon Bonaparte. Raw scale belongs to the man who owned a continent, but owning the most has never been the same as understanding the most. And in round 2, we find out that Napoleon's greatest weapon was not an army. It was a mind that worked exactly like Buffett's. Moravia, December 2nd, 1805. Napoleon has deliberately positioned his army on low ground. His generals are nervous. Every military rule says high ground wins battles, and Napoleon has given it up without a fight. The Russians and Austrians look down and see weakness. They attack. The battle was called Austerlitz. 9 hours. The Russian-Austrian army destroyed. 2 emperors fled in personal carriages. The Holy Roman Empire, 1,000 years old, dissolved within a year. Napoleon had not made a mistake. He gave up the high ground on purpose. The side that believes it has the advantage commits too early. The side that commits too early can be split and destroyed. He had won the battle in his head 3 days before it started. 2 centuries later, Warren Buffett. Same logic. When the market is euphoric, Buffett gives up the high ground. He sits out, waits for the overcommitment, then attacks, buying what nobody else wants at the exact moment everyone else is running. It is Austerlitz, played out across decades. Napoleon concentrated force at the single weakest point in the enemy's line, outnumbered 3-1 across the battlefield, and still 2-1 at the point of contact. Buffett built Berkshire the same way. Apple, Coca-Cola, Bank of America. Maximum conviction, minimum diversification. Same method, but Buffett's adversary was a market. The market does not think, it does not study, it does not lay traps. Napoleon's enemies did all 3, every morning. Winner, Napoleon Bonaparte. The market never fought back. Napoleon's enemies did, and he beat them anyway. He was the only man who could win those wars. Being irreplaceable won him every battle. Round 3 is about what it cost him everything else. An empire is not a map. An empire is whatever survives the man who built it. 1810, Napoleon's empire stretched from Madrid to Warsaw. 80 million people, the largest political structure Europe had seen since the fall of Rome. But here is what the map does not show. Every morning, in a dozen capitals, governors opened their orders from Paris. Generals waited for his instructions before moving a single regiment. Kings he had appointed, his own brothers, wrote him letters asking what to do next. Not because the system required it, because nothing in the system worked without him. His empire was not a structure, it was a performance. And like every performance, it only existed while he was on stage. There is a question Buffett has been asked for decades. What happens to Berkshire when you are gone? His answer has always been the same: nothing. Dozens of independent businesses, independent managers, a successor named and prepared for 15 years. The philosophy documented, taught, embedded in every layer of the company. If Buffett died tomorrow, Berkshire would open Monday and trade exactly the same. Napoleon's empire would not have survived Napoleon missing for a week. That is not a difference of scale. It is a difference of design. Winner? Warren Buffett. Napoleon built an empire that needed him. Buffett built a machine that did not. And that dependence, that invisible fragility at the center of everything Napoleon built, led him to the only decision that could destroy it all. Round 4 is about that decision. June 24th, 1812. 600,000 French soldiers crossed the Niemen River into Russia. Napoleon has been warned. The Russian army will not fight him. They will retreat and let the geography do the killing. His own marshals beg him to stop. He goes anyway. 6 months later, less than 30,000 make it home alive. Historians argue about the cause. The cold, the supply lines, disease. It was none of those things. It was the man. By 1812, Napoleon had won so many battles that he had stopped believing he could lose one. He crossed the line between "I know what I am doing" and "I cannot be wrong." That is not a strategic mistake. It is a philosophical one. He had every piece of information he needed to turn back. He chose to ignore it because at some point, the genius who reads situations perfectly had become the genius who believes situations will bend to him. They do not bend. Buffett has been wrong many times. Airlines, missing Amazon, holding cash through bull markets, but he has never made the bet he could not recover from. Not in 60 years, not under any pressure, not when Wall Street called him a dinosaur during the dot-com bubble. He just sat and waited and was right. Napoleon could not recognize his own ceiling. Buffett built his entire career around respecting his. Winner? Warren Buffett. One decision, one lifetime undone. Napoleon lost his empire, his freedom, and died in exile. What did he leave behind? And is it more or less than what Buffett is leaving? Round 5 decides everything. May 5th, 1821. St. Helena Island. A man is dying, 51 years old, 6 years a prisoner, dictating memoirs to officers who pretend to be writing them down. He dies poor, on an island most of the world cannot find on a map. By every visible measure, he has lost. And yet, the legal code he commissioned still governs civil law in over 70 countries. The administrative structure of modern France is his design. The metric system. The idea that a state should be run by competence instead of birthright. He lost every battle that mattered in the end, and he rewrote the operating system of Western civilization anyway. But Napoleon's legacy survived him by accident. The institutions endured because they were strong enough, not because he planned for a world without him. Buffett planned for exactly that. The Giving Pledge, which he co-founded with Bill Gates, has gathered over 250 signatories across 30 countries, a public commitment to give away the majority of their fortunes. His letters are taught in universities worldwide. His successor has taken the helm at Berkshire. 99% of his fortune will be given away. Napoleon's legacy survived because it was strong enough. Buffett's will survive because it was designed to. Winner? Warren Buffett. Napoleon left a wreckage that became a foundation. Buffett is building a foundation that will never need to become a wreckage. Final score, Warren Buffett, 3 rounds. Napoleon Bonaparte, 2. Buffett wins the empire, the limit, and the legacy. Napoleon wins the wealth and the strategy. Napoleon Bonaparte was the most ambitious human being in recorded history. He reshaped a continent, won 53 battles,
crowned himself emperor at 35 and lost everything. Not because his enemies were smarter, but because he stopped being able to imagine that he could be wrong.
Buffett still lives in the house he bought in 1958, still drinks cherry Coke, never crowned himself anything, and never made the bet he could not walk away from. Napoleon had more, Buffett kept more, and in the end, the richer man might simply be the one who never lost everything in a single winter. But let's be honest, if you had Napoleon's mind, would you have known when to stop? Or would you have crossed the Niemen anyway? Leave your answer in the comments.